In Tragedy, a true crime podcast, we discuss missing persons cases, violent crime, and other sensitive topics that may be difficult for some listeners. Listener discretion is advised. Our show is a place where every story matters and every voice deserves to be heard. To support this podcast, you can subscribe at www.tragedyaTrueCrimePodcast.com for early access to new episodes. And join our Facebook community, Tragedy, a True Crime Podcast, for updates, discussions, and ways to support the families we feature. Welcome to Tragedy, a True Crime Podcast. I'm Elisa.
And I'm Michael.
Today we're joined by Lori Williams, Krystle Cook's aunt, someone who has carried both the love and the loss of Krystle for more than 2 decades. When a family loses someone to violence, the grief doesn't stop after the headlines fade. It changes shape, settles into everyday life, and often becomes a lifelong commitment to remembering, advocating, and fighting for justice. Lori has lived through the heartbreak of losing Krystle, the challenges of navigating a system that continues long after a conviction, and the emotional weight of recent developments, including the parole hearing that took place this March of 2026 for the person serving time in Krystle's murder. Today, Lori joins us to share memories of who Krystle was beyond the tragedy, the lasting impact her loss has had on their family, and the work being done to honor her legacy through the Krystle Rose Cook nonprofit. Lori, thank you for being here and for trusting us with your family's story, and welcome to the show.
Thank you both for having me here. I appreciate that.
And before we talk about everything that has happened, we would like for you to share with us Krystle, who she was and what stands out most when you think of her.
Oh, wow. She was, I would say, she was a blessing when she arrived in our lives. She was the first granddaughter, my first niece, first granddaughter in the family, first grandchild. Krystle was she had this infectious laugh that you could just hear it. I mean, that's what stands out to me the most, besides her love of Mountain Dew. But she was very engaged with so many different things, and just really lived a full life. She loved Japanese. I mean, she was into dance, cheerleading, loved snowboarding, typical teenager, was in the youth group, and just found the first love of her life just about that time that she thought was the love of her life. And just an incredible young lady that when I first wrote my first impact statement, she just had a really genuine golden heart for people and for animals. That's probably my best way to describe her.
What are some of your favorite memories of her?
Oh, favorite ones would be especially when she was younger, just coming home I used to live in Olympia, going to school, and I would always come home every weekend just to see her. That was one of my favorites, just because she was so young and just to hug her and whatnot. And then as she got older, just watching her grow, she did like pageants. And one of my favorite memories of her is that she was in this little girls pageant. She was like 5, I think, 5 or 6. And all these little cute girls got up there and they did their walk on this stage, and these little girls were saying, or I guess these judges were asking, what would you like to do when you grow up? And they were saying an orthodontist and all these professions that were, way beyond a 5-year-old. And then I remember Krystle came out and she goes, I just want to be a cashier lady. It was just the funniest thing. And I've always remembered that because it was so genuine. And she ended up winning the pageant.
We're laughing over here because it reminds me of my own daughter. I don't know, she was maybe 8 or 9. And we were at, I don't know why we were at Arby's. We never ate it, but we were at Arby's. And Michael is teasing her. He has this just a really good natured teasing that is just part of his characteristic. And he said to her, she's like fourth grade. And he goes, "Hey, while we're here, you should probably get an application. You can fill out an application." And do you want to say what she said?
She goes, "I'm not working at Arby's. I'm working McDonald's."
That's funny.
See, it's like the exact kind of thing. And I always like, this is, these are these moments that just always stay around you. And it was so fun.
Yes. And that's exactly.
Yeah.
I know. Because it just stood out. I'll never forget that because I was a cashier lady. And so I thought, oh, it was hilarious, funny.
It's good to have some laughs every once in a while.
Mm-hmm.
So let's shift gears a little bit. And so when Krystle was missing for a short period of time, and then we all know from listening to her story that she was taken from your family. And so how did that loss change your family over the years?
Oh, wow. That's really that's an important question. It's a hard one because my whole life changed. I guess is what you would say, just a whole 180, right? Just turned around. But it changed everything. It changed from, oh boy, I don't even know where to start with that one. It was so traumatic because it was from the moment that she was missing. I think there was a lot of denial. I think Leland spoke to that. And I think when you go through denial, there comes a point when it's reality. And I think once it becomes reality, then it's shock, of course. And then you have to slowly accept that the world isn't what you thought the world was. And I think that's where your whole existence changes, because at that point in your life, you don't trust anybody. And I know that that's really, some people might say, "Oh, I can't believe you'd say that," but it's true. On a system level and even on an interpersonal level, I think that what ends up happening is I watched my family want to commit suicide. I've heard my family want to kill somebody just to go to prison to kill murderers. I was so possessive with my children that I don't know that they really lived a normal life. I mean, I think it was as normal as it could have been, I guess. But I was pretty much like a mama bear as far as like, where they went, who they were with. If they didn't come home, you better call me. I was on the phone to them. To this day, that has never left me. If I don't hear from one of my kids, I'm immediately calling them. It could be any family member. Where are they at? What's going on with them? My anxiety, my mental health took a hit. I ended up couldn't sleep at night. So they put me on medication for that. And I took it for several years to sleep at night because it disturbed my husband and he couldn't go to work because I'd be up just walking through the house, just scared, not even scared, but just my body couldn't settle down. Eventually I just ended up with anxiety. My doctor actually, he diagnosed me with PTSD. But it took such a toll on my family overall, because nobody knows how to grieve and we don't have an instruction book on how do you cope with murder, then especially in the aftermath. I mean, how do you make love to your husband when you're devastated? How do you hold a marriage together and let your child walk out the door in a car with somebody who's asking them out on a date? You don't know them. There's just so many dynamics that go into what people don't understand, I think, with the aftermath of murder. But it was tremendous. As far as just the impact, there's so many different dynamics that go into that's just touching the surface of how it impacted the family.
You talked through that about grief, and we actually had a really interesting conversation with someone that we met along this journey who has a podcast that's all about grief, and he came on our show, and I think what really resonates with me, what you just said is people don't always know how to approach families of victims of this kind of situation, right? And so I would really like for you to speak kind of to that. And what do people sometimes misunderstand about what families of homicide victims continue to live with decades later? And how can people best support families who are going through this experience?
I would say some of the statements that are made, and I know that they're not made out of malice. I know they're not. But there's some, statements that are made first and foremost. I want to address that people need to understand that it's probably better not to make statements. It's better to just give a hug and say, I'm sorry. It's better to be silent as opposed to words that are going to make somebody feel worse about themselves. And what I'm referencing to there is we heard everything from, well, God's got another angel. Everything happens for a reason. You need to forgive or you can't be forgiven. So many statements, I believe people are well-meaning, but they say things. And I would say first and foremost is don't make a statement to somebody that's just lost somebody. It's best to just be silent or give a hug. I'm sorry. Or what can I do to help you? It's probably more simple, as far as that piece of it goes. But as you go through it, everybody's journey is different because everybody's relationship with the loved one is different. So I think people that want to support somebody, number one is educate yourself. Number one. Because grief it's not like a one size fits all. Everybody's different. Some people are very expressive, so you really don't know what they're feeling. So you can't assume they're doing okay, because they might not be. They just don't know how to talk about it. And I could go into that further, but I won't. That's my education piece on that. And it could be a gender thing there. A lot of men don't talk about it because they're protectors. They don't want to share their feelings. Where women tend to be a little bit more emotional, so they cry, and their spouses want to protect them. And how do I do this? And if I break down too, then who's going to take care of us? And so I think to make an assumption would be the second thing, is not to make an assumption about how they're grieving, because everybody is different. And some people want to talk, some people don't. Some people want to move on with life, some don't. But what I can say, and I'm just going to veer off from that a little bit, is that I think educating yourself on people that how to approach co-victims of homicide is something I wish we had more education. That's why I appreciate what you folks do. And you're putting that education out there. And just as a side note, because we did fight really hard in the state of Washington to get to recognize homicide victims. They passed a resolution years ago. We were part of that committee. And just to be able to recognize folks on homicide, because that's the start right there. And just like your podcast. And I think we need education. I think there needs to be more education on violence, whether it be homicide on an individual, like say a loved one, or mass shootings, murders, whatever that looks like. Because I think mass murders get more attention, or mass casualties get more attention than an individual. And I think sometimes we need to start recognizing that a person is a person, whether it's in a group or if it's an individual. So I think there's a lot of education to be done. But I think I'm going to go back to this. If I was to give somebody a piece of advice how to approach, I would definitely say, just say, I'm sorry. Give a hug.
I think that's really good feedback. Sometimes
Agreed.
people will say something like, "Oh, I understand what you're going through." Also
They
not
don't.
okay.
They don't, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Even if you have a similar experience, I mean, somebody, I like to make it more approachable to people, and maybe that more people to experience is divorce, right? So many people have been divorced. But if you have someone in your life who's getting divorced and you go, "Oh, I went through divorce. I know how that feels. Here's some things that work for me." Like, none of that is helpful, right? I really like your feedback. Give a hug and say, "I'm so sorry. What can I do for you in this moment?
Yeah.
What do you need from me?"
Yeah,
I think
because
that's
it
really
really
good.
is individualized. It is. And we've had some pretty just things that were said that were totally inappropriate. Like, well, when you get over this, we'll go to dinner,
Mm.
you know.
Meaning
Well,
we'll probably never have dinner, but
it, got it. That, you know what? That's exactly what I said.
right,
Was I thought to myself, well, then we'll probably never have dinner because you don't get over
right.
homicide and somebody being taken from your life like that. You're
Mm-hmm.
never going to get over it.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
So we talked a little bit about, justice and what does justice mean? And for our listeners, it is a question that I used to ask. I don't ask it anymore. Like, what does justice look
Mhm.
like for you? And part of this shift that I've experienced is because we've had the opportunity to speak with you all and learn from you all. And I want to speak specifically about the parole hearing that just happened in March of 2026. And can you tell us what that was like, that experience for you and your family?
Wow. Yeah, that was tough. I'm not gonna lie. That was rough. Number one, it was rough first and foremost because our victim advocate did not prepare us. And I think just so preparation for those who come after us, for parole hearings, be prepared. And I think luckily, and I say luckily, for us, oh, I'm going to go back to the parole hearing in a second. For us, we've been along the journey with POMC. So we went to a lot of conferences along throughout the years. And so I'm very versed with advocating, I should say. So that parole hearing was very difficult because if we couldn't get more time and keep him in jail, which we kept hearing, quote unquote, he was supposed to be getting out. He kept saying this, the offender. We would have to go back to a parole hearing and fight this every 2 years in the state of Oregon. And so then when we had received those letters about his behavior and his conduct over the 25 years and no rehabilitation, we gathered up letters from the community of support families. We just, asked for everybody to start, sending letters, calling the parole board, calling the governor. I mean, you name it. It was kind of like one of those things where you're almost running on adrenaline for about a month or so, just trying to gain the momentum of this man can't get out. And I'll tell you what that felt like. This is truly what it felt like. It felt like your life could just be snuffed out in any moment because of who this individual is and the threats that he's put out over the years. All I could think about for myself was my family. And I kept thinking how hard we fought the first go around and all the searches and then the knocks on the doors and searching for her. All I could think about was my own family. And I remember thinking, I can give everything I have to fight this and I'll do it. And, I prayed a lot and I just kept telling God that, if you're faithful, we got to keep this guy in jail. And, and I just, it was hard because it took a toll on the family. I went really private in my life, as far as because I didn't know what would happen to my family. My kids were upset because they were having to deal with this as adults now instead of as young children. And I think you, because, and I want to be careful when I say this because I'm not saying every offender is like the offender that we were dealing with. I believe there are people that can be rehabilitated that maybe are drug offense, that sold drugs and got caught. I don't know. I'm talking about lower offenses. But we just knew in his case that this was not the issue. We knew what type of person he was. And it dredged up a lot from the past about just everything that we had gone through. So you're reliving what you did 25 years ago, but it's amplified because now you're reliving it again, only you're reliving it in reality instead of numb. We were in shock before, but as my mentor, Mary Elledge, says, who's the chapter leader of the Parents of Murdered Children in Oregon, she always says, when you first go through it, you're weak and you're in shock. She goes, the second time when you have to go through this, you're stronger and you have the fight in you. And I think we took every bit of fight we had and all the resources we could get our hands on. And that's what I would suggest to people if they ever have to go through this. You can't leave anything undone. You just got to fight and never not show up for a parole hearing because they didn't expect it. They told us nobody ever shows up. And we all showed up. So it was a hard process, but the result was good for us. But anyway, it was difficult.
You talked a little bit about safety for you, safety for your family, and this.
Mm-hmm.
I went through that. I had some moments in this journey, specifically around when we were supporting the Kilgore family, and this is Michael's uncle, and his homicide has not been solved. And as people were talking to us, in the community, there were some things that came up that potentially whoever did this isn't like a safe person, right? And there were some concerns about, are we talking about some pretty high level people who are trafficking drugs or something like this? And so I had some moments where I said, should we be doing this? Like, is this safe for us? Is this safe for, my daughter? And so on a very small level, I'm not going to say understand. I hear you, and I experienced that, but obviously not at the same level that you did it. That's just kind of what is resonating with me as you're talking through your experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's interesting when we talk about that and about how the impact of a parole hearing has, because we sometimes, and I know for me, and I'm going to speak for me because I can't speak for my children, but I didn't realize the impact it would have on them until they actually shared that with me. Mom, I'm scared. So I think sometimes I don't think maybe the public doesn't have the awareness that when you're reliving and going back to a parole hearing and when you're fighting to keep somebody in jail that is a danger to society, in whatever form that is, you do can become a mark because you're keeping them there.
And so what gave you strength during all of that?
Family, community, God. I'm a strong believer. I'm not religious, but I'm definitely believe in God. I believe exercise, whether you believe that or not. I lift weights, so I went to the gym and lifted it out. Cry. The fight in you. It's the fight that sustains you. It's like it's your willpower. It's almost something there that just says you have to fight it. And it just gives you that automatic strength to know that you're fighting for Krystle, you're fighting for your family, you're fighting for everybody. You're fighting for what is right. And you're fighting for justice. And I think when you put all of those things together, how do I explain this? Let me back up, and I'm sorry. I think about the 25, 26 years ago, picking myself up off the ground and feeling like I was in this dark black hole, because that's what I felt like when I heard the news. The echoes of the screams of my mother. And I remember saying, how are we going to go forth from here? And I think you take all of the things that you learned along the way through your experience, through your conferences, just your willpower to keep going and to help other people. You take all those experiences and you take that at one moment and you say, this is what these tools are for, and this is what we're going to do. And that's what you do.
One thing I wanted to ask about, you've mentioned conferences a few times.
Yeah.
So what conferences are you attending? 'Cause we'd like our listeners to know what that is. Because I didn't even know there were conferences in this support. So
Oh, yeah.
help us with that.
Uh, um, it's called Parents of Murdered Children. And it's not just for children. Let me be clear. That's just the name they give it years ago when Bob and Charlotte Hollinger um, had developed this group because it was for their daughter, but it's been around for years. But it's Parents of Murdered Children. And it's out of Cincinnati, Ohio, and there's chapters throughout the United States, and so people can look that up. And so these conferences, every year they have an annual conference, and this is their 40th year. It's in Cincinnati. It's in Columbus, Ohio. And in these conferences, they bring, matter of fact, that's where I met Nancy Grace for the very first time. Well, the only time, but that's where I met her. But what they do is they bring guest speakers in, whether it's from Washington, D.C., bills they're working on, things that are going, that are happening. They bring in like guest speakers. And then they have classes that pertain to like parole hearings, how to grieve if you're a man, what did my loved ones suffer when they got killed, what's it like in prison. It's just various classes. Some of them are on self-care. And so what happens, and then they have a memorial during that conference, and it typically runs from Friday through Sunday. And it's for all families, anybody that, or professionals that want to learn what folks go through.
I think this
And
is so important. One of the things that I think we've done really well is building a support system for our families within the community. So in our own community, there have been some families that we have connected our family to some other families who are experiencing the loss of a loved one. And we've done a great job in the community, but what is now becoming apparent to me is that we need to help our families find out about what other supports are out there. And this is a perfect example. So I just want to thank you so much for sharing this.
No,
this is very, very
that's
important.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
That's what this is about. That's exactly what this is all about. It's about educating. And that's why, but no, Parents of Murdered Children is a wonderful organization. And when Krystle got murdered, that was the first resource that we were given. And so we've done fundraisers with them. They've been around a long time. The National Day of Remembrance for Homicide Victims is September 25th. Just as a side note, so people know that. They do celebrate that typically somewhere along the line for different, like what do I want to say, different groups in different states. And so, but just so your listeners know, and as well, as you go on, is Parents of Murdered Children also has a hotline that you can call, and they talk to you if you're struggling. And so they can reach out, and those are folks that know they can typically, it may not be the same experience, but most of them have lost a loved one to homicide they have, and they will talk to people.
This is so meaningful. Thank you for sharing all of
Oh,
that.
no, absolutely. No, that's what's important. Yeah. So just know that. And then, and like I say, and then they can reach out to the main organization, and they will tell them where there's a group in their area as well. So they're a great resource for folks that have, obviously, and the groups also, just so folks know too, even if it's an unsolved crime, a lot of times they can still go to the support groups and get support from folks to help them through that process, because a lot of those folks never found their loved ones. And in addition to that, Parents of Murdered Children, there's people that are on the board or within the organization that are private detectives. They have ways of helping them, tap into different resources and whatnot with solving crime to some degree. I don't know how many people there are now, but they have in the past.
And so let's keep talking about advocacy and what your family is doing
Mhm.
with your own,
Sure.
with the group that you are creating. So talk to us about your perspective of the heart behind the Krystle Rose Cook nonprofit and why it was important to create it.
Well, I'm not my brother's heading that one up,
Mm-hmm.
or heading that group up. But from what I understand, it's to help folks, like say for expenses, so that they like just things that we've gone through as a family, being able to, you know, just I believe he's setting it up to help people that have gone through the same thing with, like financial resources and whatnot as far as that goes. And I thought he mentioned it once, developing it as a scholarship.
Yeah, that stuck with me because I'm a
Yep.
teacher, so that one.
Yeah, yep, exactly. And I think it's important because sometimes, yes, I just think it's important. And in Crystal's name, that's wonderful, to be able to help those folks that are really in need, that, just a scholarship to go out there in her name.
And I'm even thinking about like if we kind of go back to these amazing resources that you're sharing with us,
Hmm.
most, if not all, of the families that we are serving
Hmm.
come from underrepresented, maybe they're
Hmm.
minorities or,
Yeah,
live in I think
correct.
impoverished is too big of a word, but maybe an area where they aren't as economically blessed as we happen to be. And so I can see, the benefit of that too, and maybe supporting families to get to where they need to be who maybe otherwise couldn't afford to do it on their own to get there.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, there's so much that I think, and this is what I love about this podcast is the fact that there's so much need out there, and you're getting that out there because there's so much untapped. It's just mind blowing. What how much homicide there is that we nobody even knows about,
Mm.
and
How,
and
oh,
unsolved
sorry.
crime.
How
No,
can
no,
our
go ahead.
listeners support the mission of the nonprofit and help to keep Crystal's story alive?
I would say sharing about it, and then, if they financially can donate to it, but I would definitely say sharing and letting folks know about it. And then as they get the website, the more information out there, and then taking those resources and helping folks.
I want to go back to the conversation we were having about grief. And if you could say something directly to families who are walking through similar grief, what would it be?
Hmm. Know you're not alone, and reach out to like these different places like we're just talking about, different organizations and whatnot. I would say tap into resources, but never, I want to say, no, you're not alone, because I think there's something to be said when you're walking through this type of grief, traumatic grief. Um, you can really think nobody understands how you feel because, like we shared, because all grief is different, but there's always somebody out there willing to listen. There is. And that's why these organizations, the like nonprofit group and Parents of Murdered Children and your victims advocate crime compensation organization, that's why these are so important. Because what I've seen over the years, and this is why I want people to know that are even unsolved crime, is that they're not alone, and I don't want them to give up. And I know it can be easy to say, I can't do this anymore, or this happens a lot. I've seen people commit suicide. I've seen people get on the bottle, the drugs, and to try to ease the pain. The pain can be so overbearing that you don't know where to put that pain.
And before we close, is there anything about Krystle or your family's journey that we haven't asked that you would want our listeners to know?
I would say that from our family to you folks that you're doing a good work. This is what I would say, because it's been long overdue that somebody has stepped up to recognize victims of crime, co-victims of crime.
We really appreciate that. I don't think that we intended get to this place in this journey. I'm not saying I'm not happy to be here. We were thinking we would do probably a few, episodes to support our family and Jody's unsolved homicide, and people just reached out and reached out and reached out, and so the thing was there, and so we
that was the most surprising thing to me in a good way.
Right.
Is we've talked about some podcasts before, so people who've listened will know this story, but it was originally supposed to be a handful of episodes to help the family get some more exposure for Jody, and that was going to be it. And then someone reached out and said, "Have you heard about this guy Ian Rogers?" And then so we talked to his mother, then we picked up that story, and then another call came, and then another, and then another after that. And so it became very inspiring to continue.
There you go, right there. And that's,
here we are. We're about to roll into almost 70 episodes. I can't believe I'm saying that after 1 year. It's only been a year.
See, there you go. I'm just like so pleased, because that's what I would say from us to you is probably more than anything, is because for us, it's really speaking about Krystle. It's keeping her name out there, and it's just important. And I think that, I know it's like you said, though, you made it just a statement. It's not something that, it's, what do I want to say? It's not something that everybody's going to go around, oh yeah, this is what we're doing, right? But the reality of it is, who's going to do it?
Mm-hmm.
Who's going to do it? And so I think that's why I think we have so much appreciation for it, is because folks like you are stepping up and doing it. You're helping people, and that every little podcast, not every little, but I mean each one, and I think that that's what's important.
Yeah, I think for me, as you say that, I mentioned that I was an educator, and I was either in the classroom or a leader or something for 30 years, and to boil it all down, I'm still helping people. That's the crux of really what I was doing all those years, whether it was coaching a teacher or helping a student to learn to read or helping a family navigate, the special education system. And that's just part of what I do. And fortunately, whomever, the universe, whatever, resonates with you, put this in front of us and allows me to continue to help people. It just looks different, but it's the same thing.
It's the same thing. And that's what I said over the years, is you have to put your pain into purpose, because you can not do it. And that's why I try to encourage people to keep walking forward, because that's what it's about, is that pain's got to go somewhere, and you might as well put it to good purpose and help other people. And that's how I found my healing, was through helping other people.
You've been listening to Tragedy, a true crime podcast. Our purpose is to honor victims by sharing their stories through the voices of friends, family, and those whose lives were forever changed. If today's episode resonated with you, we encourage you to subscribe, leave a review, and share the podcast so these important stories continue to be heard. Together, we can preserve their memories and ensure their voices are never forgotten. If you have ideas for cases we should cover or questions about what you heard, you can connect with us through our Facebook group, Tragedy, a True Crime Podcast, on X @Tragedy Podcast, by email at tragedyaTrueCrimePodcast@gmail.com, or by visiting our website, www.tragedyaTrueCrimePodcast.com. Thank you for listening, and we hope you'll join us next time.